All right, welcome. I am Kirsten Parsons. I am part of the team at Ingleside. We are a not-for-profit organization who manages three premier life plan communities here in the DMV area. We have one community in Maryland, one in the district, and one in Virginia. I'm going to introduce you to our communities as well as our community-based services today as we have expanded beyond our walls to serve the greater community with some specific offerings, especially related to dementia care. So I'm going to introduce you to those services today, and then we are joined by Pam Mills, care manager from Corwood Care Management, and she'll be presenting our seminar today. So our three life plan communities, Ingleside at Rock Creek is our flagship community located in Northwest DC. We've been on this property since the 60s, but our heritage actually dates back to the early 1900s. We were formerly known as the Presbyterian Home for Widows. So that is our origin story, and we have these deep philanthropic roots that we are so proud of and continue to this day as we have the Westminster Ingleside Foundation that does care for residents in all of our communities, as well as different initiatives for programming and campus updates and other things. So we're super grateful to have that foundation, and we maintain our nonprofit status at all three properties. Westminster at Lake Ridge is our property in Lake Ridge, which is just outside of Woodbridge, Virginia. There's a beautiful little riverside town there called the Occoquan. So if you're familiar with where historic Occoquan is, we are a stone throw, a couple mile or so from them. That is our only property that offers cottages. We are on 62 acres there. And then Ingleside at King Farm is our baby sister community located in Rockville, Maryland. The King Farm neighborhood was formerly a maybe 2,000 acre farm that is now really an intentionally planned multi-generational neighborhood. So single family homes and apartments and townhouses, and then our life plan community right there in the middle of the community. So if I'm using the term life plan and you're thinking, I don't know what that means, or that's not a term I've heard before, you may have heard the term CCRC or continuing care retirement community. That terminology is actually interchangeable. It seems like this field likes to just come up with terminology and acronyms that change every couple of years. Retirement communities maybe had a feel to it that, oh, I'll get there when I'm retirement age. Whereas life plan communities and this new terminology of LPC, I think helps individuals realize that if you're a planner, you can go ahead and make that plan about moving to a life plan community many, many years ahead of when you would actually intend to do so. And, that's actually where the field is now. Many, many life plan communities, or what was known as a CCRC, have extensive waiting lists at this point. And so we are seeing that more and more that planners will plan and they're looking years ahead to move. So that terminology, CCRC or life plan community, what it means is that on one campus or in one community, you do have independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing all. So offer assisted living or maybe assisted living and memory care, or maybe they even offer independent, assisted, and memory care. That does not make them a life plan community. What makes it a life plan community is also having that skilled nursing facility. So highly regulated, difficult to run, and that is something that is very, very few communities offer that service as well. And so if you're thinking, what is a skilled nursing facility? Do I know what that is? That is where short-term rehab occurs or long-term care. So again, a lot more jargon and not really the purpose of our call today, but I want to just make it clear what a life plan community offers when we talk about all three of these levels of care. Ingleside frequently does do webinars describing all of the levels of care, not just for our community, but what it means to be a life plan community. So if that's of interest, you will have my contact information. Reach out. We'll not only get you a copy of today's webinar, but we can share with you information on either upcoming webinars or previous ones that describe more fully what a life plan community is. Our communities particularly have something what we call memory support assisted living. So in addition to having independent assisted and skilled nursing services, we also have a dedicated neighborhood at the assisted living level of care for individuals who do have neurocognitive change, really an effort to serve individuals who are in the moderate stages of cognitive change, meaning that they certainly need some help with medication management or some activities of daily living, but they are not yet in an advanced stage of dementia where they need total care or would benefit from being in a long-term care setting. One of the things that I want to introduce that's our newest community-based service. The intention here was to serve our waitlist members, and now it's expanded to individuals not even on our waitlist, is Experienced by Ingleside. This tailored concierge service allows you to have access to our vendors. And so whether it's a dog walker or grocery delivery or chef prepared meals, you would reach out to your concierge team member through Ingleside and services you're interested in. Maybe, for example, it's, my housekeeper who I love is traveling. They'll be gone all summer long. Can you send someone for, 8 times over the summer? And that's something we would line up with one of our vendors. So there's no subscription fee. You just pay for the service plus a surcharge for the individual who is doing your concierge portion. So navigating those different vendors and lining you up for whatever service you share with them. Ingleside at Home by Interim is our home care agency. We are able to serve individuals both in our communities and the greater community. So when we're talking about Montgomery County and Northwest DC and beyond, and Prince William County, Virginia, we are able to help people age in place wherever they call home. So whether that's in our independent living in our communities or in their home setting, we want to make sure that that personal care or companionship is able to occur. And then lastly, I want to share with you about Ingleside Engaged. So earlier I was mentioning that we do have our memory support neighborhoods in assisted living that really are for individuals in the moderate stages of cognitive change. We do have that nursing home level of care at all 3 of our properties, which is able to cater to individuals who are in the advanced stages of cognitive change. And so you may be thinking, well, what do you have for individuals who are in an early stage of cognitive change? And Ingleside Engaged is our social day program with the intention to serve those people who are either dealing with a mild cognitive impairment diagnosis, they already maybe do have the Alzheimer's diagnosis, but they're in an early stage, or there's a different diagnosis that is kind of manifesting with some cognitive change. And so this is an environment where individuals are able to come together for really intentional social engagement over a meal, music therapy, art therapy, exercise. It is so well designed and planned, and we are just grateful to have this program at all 3 of the Ingleside properties. So this is open both to our residents who are in independent living, maybe for them or their spouse, as well as the greater community. If this is something that is of interest to you, again, after the reach out to me, ask me more, and I'll connect you to program directors. So very last thing I want to share with you before I hand it over to Pam Mills is our upcoming webinar. You may not have known it, but you're part of a series today. So this is the 5th program out of 6 that we've offered in 2020, Navigating Dementia. And so our very final program is next month, June 17th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And this program is on transitioning to a residential memory program. And so if you're wondering, what does that look like? What kind of conversations should we be having? How do we know if it's a good memory neighborhood? Our 3 memory program directors are actually those questions in this presentation. So I hope you can join us for that as well. It's on our website and it's also virtual. All right, so Pam, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to pass it over to you. If you're just joining us now, Pam Mills, Care Management. She is one of their care managers who serves not just clients in our community, but across, I think, the whole DMV, right, Pam?
Yes, so we serve as the Associate Director of Care Management here at Corwood. We serve Frederick County, Montgomery County, and Washington, D.C.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to pass it off to you, and I know you have some slides to share with us.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me today, Kirsten. I'm really excited to be part of this very pivotal program and jump you off into this series. So let me take a moment and share my screen. Okay. Okay, so if everybody can see that, then this is what our presentation is today. And as Kirsten mentioned, I'm Pamela Mills. I'm the Associate Director of Care Management at Corwood Care. I also have over 35 years experience working with people who are living with cognitive change in their lives. I love what I do, and I am very dedicated to providing a person-directed approach to helping a person normalize the experience of living with cognitive change. So today we're going to talk about the differences between normal aging and cognitive change, particularly what is considered a normal decline in capability compared to a disease type of experience like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontal temporal lobe dementia, actual diagnoses of disease types of problems in the brain. So what is normal aging? First of all, normal aging is just getting older and understanding that your organs that are in your body will change in their capability to thrive in ways just because you're getting older. It's important to understand that just like, kidneys can change and stomach lining can change, brain can change, your bones will change. Uh, Everything in your body changes as you get older. However, because of changes in the brain doesn't mean that you're going to get a disease like Alzheimer's disease or frontal temporal lobe dementia or vascular dementia or other types of dementias. So what is normal aging? It's just changes in your body and brain that are not particularly harmful, that are not causing a form of rapid decline. A person's lifestyle might change, over the years. Their nutrition, their stress level, their genes, all of that is going to change. But experiencing a neurocognitive disorder that can be diagnosed as a disease, that is not normal. So when you look at aging in health, it's really important to understand what affects a person's aging. The first and foremost thing that affects a person's aging that we have no control over whatsoever is our hereditary conditions, our genes. If you look at your lifestyle, that is potentially changeable. Like whether or not you choose to smoke, sometimes what types of foods that you eat and how those foods affect your particular body. We can change the environment that we live in. Some of us, we're lucky enough to be able to move outside of an environment that could be environmentally unhealthy. Our life occurrences, such as injuries that have happened to us or diseases that have occurred over a lifetime, these are things that could potentially be changed based on what we choose to do or not do in our lives. However, our genes we're born with, and so that we cannot change. And in many cases, you will see people of the same genetic family resemble the same physical traits or have the same types of physical traits. Not to the 100% percentage, but you'll see similarities in your genetic family related to aging. So while healthy lifestyle choices may help you to maintain a healthy body and brain, we can't control if there is a particular gene that does happen to trigger a disease. So age-related changes related to cognitive function and learning, you will see as you age an increased difficulty in finding words. I often tell people, I'm 54 and I experience that myself where I could be, walking into a room and wait a minute, why did I come here? And I'll talk actually a little bit more about why that happens later on in this presentation. So if you're experiencing things where you can't think of the words like, on the tip of your tongue, or you're walking into a room and you're like thinking, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I was coming here for a reason and now I can't remember why. Please do not self-diagnose yourself with cognitive decline or dementia, because that happens to all of us as we age. In fact, it would be very rare, extremely rare, if a person did not have that experience as they were getting older. So we do experience a decrease in our capability of paying attention. We do have a lack of ability to multitask and to complete complex tasks as we get older. Um, and the interesting thing when it comes to science and research right now is, I don't know if you've heard or pay attention to many of the research projects that are out there. Currently, right now, particularly in the US, we have the oldest generation of individuals that have ever been researched, in history of mankind. So what that means is not only are people living longer, but scientists have the capability of studying people who are in these what are considered the oldest old categories, which are people 90 and above. Okay, and so we are first learning scientifically. We have not known really to this point in our society, in our humankind, what is considered normal for a brain that is aged 90 and above. This is information that is kind of first coming to us through longitudinal studies that are occurring in society and our humankind, which is great. But here's the thing, it's also a lot of information that we have not known to this time. So we can't really say, if you're let's say 95 years old, should you have more forgetfulness than an 85-year-old? Or should your body be experiencing certain types of changes for that's considered normal for a 95-year-old versus what would be considered normal for someone who's 85, 75, 65? So these are all research information. This is all research information that is first coming to the forefront now. However, that said, it is considered definitely normal, depending on your specific age, to have the ability to learn new information and to accomplish new skills, to have the ability to increase your talents and your capabilities, to be able to create new memories, to improve your vocabulary and your language skills. We are currently right now in what's considered the information age. Okay, the information age is modern technology, pretty much to its most extreme. What that means is that we have a much higher demand on the human brain than ever before. I don't know if you multitask in your daily experiences. I know I do, and I know that probably the majority of us do on a day-to-day basis. But what if I told you that the human brain was truly not designed to multitask? Multitasking is really a new skill that has come to us with this information age, with this modern technology age. And where before multitasking was considered a talent, if somebody was like, oh wow, they're so good, they can multitask. Now it is considered a demand, where it's like, oh my gosh, she's not good at multitasking. That must be a problem. There must be a problem with her. However, that's not correct. Multitasking for a normal brain is really considered to be like above and beyond what the normal capability for a brain is supposed to be. We've trained ourselves out of stress and anxiety and common need to be able to do this multitasking. However, it is not something that the brain was originally designed to do. Now, if you want to think about being able to hold on to long-term memories, we also have a much higher demand on the brain than generations before, which is we have a higher demand for an increased capacity for memory turnover, which means that people are being expected to remember more information for the short term than, again, ever before in humankind. So take example of your passwords, okay? I don't know about you, but I gotta write mine down. They say, oh, don't write them down and then keep them in a place somebody else can find them. You know, that's safety wise, that makes sense. However, it's really hard to hold on to this type of information, even with a so-called normal brain. Okay, because the demand for the type of passwords that we have to remember, the capital letter, the special characters, the small letters, the numbers, and then the turnover that now our computers are saying, oh no, you have to wipe out that password every 3 months. You have to use one that you haven't used the last 7 times. That is just really challenging for your brain to hold on to that capacity for memory turnover. So to have that demand, again, is asking above and beyond what your brain was designed to do. Okay, so here are some examples of what happens due to the information age. We have to learn how to be patient with ourselves and others. We have to understand that society is potentially asking a little bit too much for our brain's capacity, and that is normal, for us to have to go a little bit slower in order to remember. It's normal for us to have occasional memory lapses, such as not being able to remember our usernames or our passwords or our recently learned information, especially depending upon, the age, the organic age of your brain. It is normal to have a decreased attention span as we get older. It's normal to experience eye strain, visual fatigue, and some forms of hearing impairment, not all forms, but some forms of hearing impairment are coming actually more normalized. And that I just went recently to a really great presentation from an audiologist, and they were talking about how younger and younger people are actually having problems with hearing impairment just because of lifestyle and the environment and exposure to noises at a younger age. And it is, again, it's fascinating to watch this research kind of flood in as we're learning how impairments are changing as we're getting older and what is considered normal these days. It's also normal to have challenges in learning new technology or keeping up with the trends. It's normal to feel overwhelmed more easily. And it's also normal to be at a higher risk of social isolation, especially if we feel behind the times from our peers. Doesn't mean it's not changeable, but it is normal to feel that way. Okay, so also here are some aspects of the information age for us to look at as to why it might be a positive experience to be living longer now. We have much more access to information and learning opportunities than ever before. And we're seeing more and more research pour in that is changing our capability of living quality lives longer, feeling healthier, having more ways to stay connected with family and friends because of that technology. We're on it right now with Zoom. Many of you might be Zooming your families, on a regular basis, and they're spread all over the world. That was not a possibility, 20 years ago. So knowing how the information age has indeed helped us, as well as created some additional hurdles for us, is important to understand. We also have more access to cognitive stimulation in a variety of different ways. There are more books that have been written, there are games, there are puzzles, there's more educational content. I can take a class in guitar from my own kitchen. I can go on to what I joke with my husband, YouTube University, and learn how to be a plumber, learn how to fix my toilet or my shower. I was never able to do that before in any time in humankind. So we have, again, access to so many more tools, which is an excellent, excellent resource. So what we want to do, if we feel like we're struggling in this information age, if we feel like that our memories might be affected, or short-term memory loss might be occurring a little bit more often, or we find ourselves having difficulty remembering certain things. The good news also with the information age and technology is that we can create a toolbox for ourselves. So there are a lot of apps that are out there that exist. There's, OneNote, Google Calendar, Google Keep. When I was writing these slides, I was looking at the extreme amount of memory apps or reminder apps that are out there, ways that we can find easier ways to hold on to that information for us. And then having the capability of going back and remembering that we have those notes is a different thing altogether. But there are ways of setting up reminders for ourselves that involve sound and vision, and it's really great to use some of these apps. Sometimes I am just amazed by ways that they've affected my life. And then there's also the physical tools, such as the good old sticky note. I still have a bunch of those. My mom's the one who taught me all about sticky notes when I was younger. And she was an office manager for her whole life. And she swore by the sticky note. And, this was, of course, before smartphones and apps. There's actually a sticky note app out there. But, still the traditional version is still very, very valuable. Um, and also, there's different things that you can do, like, different other types of technology that you can buy, such as voice assistants and smartphones and tablets. One of the things that we have in our own house, and that I used with my father when he was living, was the voice assistant, the Alexa device. And you can set up reminders on the voice assistant. And that was one thing that I used for my father to remind him to take his medication. And it was completely free, by the way, which one thing that I really love about this Alexa voice assistant is that you just buy the voice assistant, and then you can use it for video calls. You can use it for these reminders. It really has a lot of really good tools on there. So I programmed on this voice assistant for him to just take his medicine, and it would go off at certain times during the day, and it reminded him to take his medicine, which was good. So again, put together a toolbox for yourself, and that can help you overall. So what are some possible risks and threats to brain health? Some medications, you always want to discuss the medications that you're on with your doctors, and you always want to make sure that all of your doctors know every medication and supplement that you are taking. You always want to have a list of your medications and your supplements that you bring to all of your doctors' visits, and then keep upgrading and updating those lists, and have them and share them not only with your doctors but with your family. And then you want to have a discussion with your doctors if you're taking over a certain amount of medications. Pharmacists talk about that if you're taking over 5 medications on a daily basis, there is a risk for what's called polypharmacy interactions. And so if you have more than 5 medications that you're taking, you really want to sit down with your doctor and go over all of those medications and make sure that any of those medications could not potentially be causing symptoms or side effects, that just because of the amount of medications that you're on. Also, possible risks and threats to brain health include smoking. Hopefully nobody is still doing that, but some people still might be. Excessive or consistent use of alcohol. In fact, they're doing more studies these days that are showing sometimes even any amount of alcohol in the body can be detrimental to your cellular health, including your brain. Of course, if you happen to have heart disease or diabetes or other health problems, that can be a risk to your brain health. A poor diet. Now, what is a poor diet? I believe in everything in moderation, okay? But a poor diet is when you're really experiencing high levels of salt, high levels of fat, high levels of processed foods, or consistent levels of high salt, consistent levels of high fat, consistent levels of processed foods. So if you're experiencing that, that should be a diet that probably you can meet with a nutritionist or a registered dietitian and sit down and come up with another type of meal plan for yourself. There are a lot of resources out there to put together healthier nutrition for you on a day-to-day basis. Insufficient sleep, believe it or not, is one of the top five, if not the top three, causes of cognitive impairment. So if you have a history of not sleeping enough or having poor quality of sleep, where you're not having an opportunity to recharge, where you wake up tired, or you wake up with a headache, or you might have things like sleep apnea or other types of poor quality of sleep. It is really important for you to meet with a sleep specialist and discuss with that sleep specialist. Not only you might want to do a sleep study, but you can discuss with that sleep specialist what types of tools are available to you to be able to get more quality sleep. Some of us is just developing a sleep hygiene routine where we can prepare ourselves to go to sleep earlier, and we're not scrolling our phone before going to bed, or we don't have bright lights on in our home closer to bedtime. We're not taking maybe excessive naps during the day. So having just a routine that can improve your sleep hygiene can lead to better quality sleep over the long term of your life. Also, having a lack of physical activity, getting those steps in, or doing some exercise, whatever type of exercise your body is capable of doing, working with a physical therapist or a personal trainer or an exercise physiologist. All of these people can help put together healthier routines to stay active, for your body. And then, of course, little social activity or being alone most of the time. There's an old study from the 1960s that talked about social isolation can equal smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, I'm not really sure who did the math on that it wasn't like 12 cigarettes or it wasn't 20 cigarettes, that, the 15 cigarettes a day, but nonetheless, if you are not having valuable social relationships in your life, if you're feeling lonely, and by the way, you can be lonely in a room full of people, but you're just not having those quality relationships that are feeding your soul, that are feeding your overall well-being and health. And it can only be like three people, by the way. It doesn't have to be like a large amount of people. But you want quality relationships in your life. Humankind is actually a social species, so we have to stay connected in order to be healthy. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about medicines and brain health. You always want to go over what types of medications you're taking with all of your doctors. You want to make sure that all of your doctors know all the medications and all the supplements that you are taking, particularly if you're experiencing some side effects in memory or sleep or brain function. You're noticing these types of changes in yourself. You want to have these conversations. Okay. Other common conditions that affect brain health include heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, infections, brain injury or a history of brain injury, a history of falls, especially when those falls lead to a head injury, stress or depression, malnutrition, dehydration, and sleep problems. So if you're experiencing any of these situations, these things in your life, you want to have active conversations with your doctor and find out what you can do to help yourself with this situation. Let's talk about, again, what is considered normal for your capability. Occasional forgetting is actually normal, like I said before, especially in this information age. So if you're like, stymied a little bit about, oh my gosh, I put my keys down and I don't know where I put them. Okay, that's normal, especially when you have a multitasking brain. Your brain is, being distracted by maybe your phone is going off, or you didn't put your keys in the same place that you have a history of always putting them, which, by the way, creating a routine around valuable items in your life where you're always putting them in the same place and you're putting reminders in that environment, it really truly helps you remember and find things easier. So, for example, when I do come into my house, I always have the same place that I put my glasses down, or that same place that I put my keys down. So I know I can always find them when I'm looking for them. So again, where did I put my keys? Normal. What are those? If I was going to show you what keys were and you didn't know what they were, that again is a significant problem. I didn't send my daughter a birthday card. Again, very normal in this multitasking universe where we are just busy and we might have just forgotten, to do a certain task, versus I have a daughter, that's a problem. So those of you who are going to your doctors regularly, for your every, 6 month doctor visit, he might do a clock drawing test for you. And you might be like, why are you asking me to draw a clock? What does that do? So here's just, some examples of what that clock drawing test does do. And if in case you've ever wondered, it is a very easily administratable test. And it's been used for over 30 years. It is a diagnostic, that can show a trained physician that there might be some particular signs that could lead to a cognitive impairment, particularly Alzheimer's disease, vascular or frontal temporal lobe dementia. The diagnostician may also watch for signs of, tremor in your hands, or a vision impairment, or other co-occurring concerns that might limit a person's capability. The drawing test also demonstrates a person's ability to remember and follow sequential directions, as well as have a verbal understanding of those sequential directions. And then it measures abstract thinking, concentration, planning, and visuospatial abilities, as well as executive functioning. It's actually a very valuable test, and you'd be surprised how much a diagnostician can learn from that test. So there is an importance for early screening. You always want to, continue to meet with your doctor on a regular basis. In fact, it is important to talk about how you might be experiencing some changes, that you've noticed with your doctors. It's always important not to be ashamed or afraid of talking about, changes that you've noticed, while also being overly anxious about changes that you've noticed. We want to observe changes in our bodies in a very neutral way. Try not to get anxious about them, try not to perseverate on them, try not to be overly stressed about them, but do discuss them with knowledgeable people who can give you appropriate next steps, or appropriate feedback, or appropriate insight, because stress and anxiety can also lead to brain degradation. So it's important to live a life where you're not overly stressed, or you're not overly anxious, but you're allowing yourself to get the answers that you need when you've noticed you're having maybe some challenges that you did not have before. You also want to have follow through when there is a particular issue going on. For example, you want to have your powers of attorney lined up. In fact, it's recommended by attorneys that a person over the age of 18 have a power of attorney lined up. I can bet you that 95 to 98% of people do not have powers of attorney after the age of 18. It's usually something that we do much later in life. However, it is important to always have your powers of attorney lined up for both finance and healthcare, because, emergencies can happen at any time. And specifically with HIPAA rules these days, it's important that the right person that you've given permission to be involved in your life and your health decisions and your financial decisions is not only aware that you want them to be involved, but also is capable of being involved. So please, if you don't have a power of attorney or a healthcare power of attorney already designated, or even an advance directive designated, please do work on that as soon as possible. You also want to designate a plan for long-term care or assisted living or at-home professional support, even if right now this need is not current in your life. Your loved ones are going to want to know what you want to have happen if you need these types of services. Do you want at-home professional support? Is your home able to have you age in place? Not every home is capable of for a person to age in place successfully and safely. There are some homes that I go into as a care manager where there's just way too many steps. There's no bathroom on a main level. The kitchen is on a different level than the bedroom, which is on a different level from the full bath. The stairways are way too narrow to have a stair chair. So it's important to know that if you cannot age in place in your home, that you have a solution in place, that you have already thought about, where you might, want to age if you can't age in your home. Okay, and that's also, by the way, one thing that care managers can do for you. So again, here are just some examples of the difference between what is normal aging and what might be some signs of Alzheimer's disease. Forgetting whole experiences versus forgetting part of an experience. Rarely able to remember later, or often able to remember later. You have that experience where you forgot something temporarily and you're racking your brain and you're trying really hard to remember it, but you can't. But then here you are 2, 3 hours later, and boom, it just pops into your mind as to what you were trying to remember later. Again, I've had that experience. It's perfectly normal. Again, part of that information age and multitasking, where you might have been distracted in the moment, and that's one reason why your brain just couldn't remember it. Or maybe you were dehydrated, you hadn't, or malnourished, you hadn't had your breakfast yet, or you were feeling tired because you didn't sleep well the night before. Again, being able to remember things later, is normal versus not having the capability to remember at all. Gradually unable to follow written or spoken directions versus usually, maybe with the help of, some sticky notes or an app, you're able to follow written and spoken directions. Again, a person with Alzheimer's unable to use notes as reminders versus a person with normal aging is able to use notes as reminders. And then, of course, just taking care of yourself, taking care of your body. A person living with Alzheimer's disease is unable gradually over time to not be able to care for their bodies or their own well-being versus a person with normal aging typically is. So again, what is a neurocognitive disorder? It is an umbrella term that refers to the decline in brain function. It affects your memory, your thinking, your language, your judgment, your planning, and your behavior. It typically affects your executive functioning system as the main area of your brain that is affected due to the neurocognitive disorder, which is being experienced in your brain through some sort of cellular loss, through some sort of brain damage, or through some neurochemical disruption in your brain. This can be diagnosed by a neurologist after multiple types of tests. If you're going to your doctor and the doctor is doing a mini mental exam or a very quick memory exam and diagnoses you with Alzheimer's disease, that is not the right doctor for you. Uh, Neurocognitive disorder can be and must be properly diagnosed with blood tests, with imaging scans, either a CT scan or an MRI, usually done over time. Usually there's a baseline test that or imaging that is done, and then 6 months later, there's a different test that is done, and over time, you're seeing the changes in the brain. It is not an instant diagnosis unless there is some very, very extreme evidence in the moment, but still not an instant diagnosis and should never be an instant diagnosis. So here are some common warning signs. Again, you want to think about memory loss that is disrupting your daily life. Okay, some examples of that disruption would be you can't remember things that you were capable of remembering before. If you want to learn a really good article about what is cognitive impairment and what it looks like, use your phone to scan this slide with that QR code. While I explain it, it really is an excellent article from the Cleveland Clinic that I highly recommend that people read if you want to learn more about it. Now, other examples of what might be some other warning signs: difficulty completing familiar tasks in your home. Again, not new tasks, but tasks that you have done for a long period of time and having difficulty completing those familiar tasks. Also, new problems with words or with speaking. That is a serious concern. Not problems that I've had, the majority of my life or over the last 10 years, but new problems. And then again, losing the ability to retrace your steps or having decreased or poor judgment when the person did not have that before. Sudden changes in mood or personality can also be a concern. So these are, again, some QR codes that you can scan with your phone to learn more about these articles. These are some really excellent articles that I selected for you to learn. If you are not familiar with scanning QR codes, what you do is you take your smartphone and you hold it up, to the slide with your photo app open, and the link will automatically come up. You don't like physically take a picture of it, but what you do is you just hold it up and then the link will come up automatically, and then you click on that link. So here's again just a brief review. Is it a myth or a fact? Neurocognitive disorder is a normal part of aging. Is that a myth or is that a fact? It's a myth. Okay, neurocognitive disorder is not a normal part of aging. Symptoms occur more frequently in people over the age of 65, but again, not normal. Okay, so next question. The longer a person lives, they are more likely to develop some type of neurocognitive disorder. That's actually a fact. The longer we live, we are more susceptible to anything, any changes in our health. Okay, so another question. Alzheimer's is the only type of neurocognitive disorder. That is not true. That's a myth. There are actually potentially over 100 types of neurocognitive disorders. And the going saying is you've met one person with a specific disorder, you have met one person. Because, for example, Alzheimer's disease, it might be the same diagnosis that 20 people have, but each of those 20 people are going to experience that disorder in different ways. And then people under the age of 65 cannot get neurocognitive disorders. That's a myth. Okay, there are early onset types of neurocognitive disorder that people can get sometimes as young as their 40s and their 50s. Okay, what is mild cognitive impairment? Mild cognitive impairment is also a diagnosable disorder. It is more pronounced than what would be considered normal aging. But it is not yet diagnosed as an actual cognitive disorder like Alzheimer's disease. So if you're going to think about it as a spectrum of change in your cognition, on one lower area of the spectrum, you have normal aging. The middle area, you might have mild cognitive impairment. And then the far area is where you have your actual cognitive disorder. In some cases, mild cognitive impairment can revert back to normal cognition, depending on what is actually causing that cognitive impairment, that mild cognitive impairment. And it is estimated that 10 million people in the US have mild cognitive impairment, and that more than 90% of those people are unaware of their condition. And of those people who are diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, approximately 15% of those people will progress into a more severe type of cognitive impairment, which is why, again, it's always important to have early screenings and conversations with your medical professionals. Um, Two general types of mild cognitive impairment is non-amnestic MCI, which primarily affects your thinking skills or the ability to complete a complex task. And then amnestic MCI, which is particularly affecting your memory. What might look like a neurocognitive disorder but is not, or might not be, again, drug interactions and medication interactions, which is why you need to have those conversations with your doctors if you're on more than 5 medications on a regular basis. Types of emotional disorders like anxiety or depression can appear to be a neurocognitive disorder. Metabolic imbalances or endocrine disorders with your thyroid, having eyesight problems or hearing impairments that go untreated can definitely cause a brain to work much harder. Tumors, infections, or brain injuries. And then, of course, having anesthesia in your body or certain types of arteriosclerosis can also potentially create cognitive changes that can be potentially treatable. So other potential causes that are being researched, again, we've heard about, as research continues, the buildup of amyloid plaques in the brain. Significant changes due to an environment change like moving or some significant stressors in your life, which is termed transition trauma. Having chronic inflammation is also being seen as a significant cause of cognitive change or diagnoses of Alzheimer's disease, exposure to heavy metals or pesticides. Again, we talked about genes and, you're hereditary. Of course, we've mentioned drug interactions, unknown pathogens like viruses. There were a lot of people around COVID that ended up with brain fog or other types of cognitive types of impairment. The brain's electrical system can have, off where people are having mini seizures and they might not even know it. And then vascular diseases or strokes, mini strokes, micro strokes in the brain. These are all things that can, again, lead to possible cognitive change. So there are potentially some risk factors that can be worked on through lifestyle change. I've shared these with you already, including exercise, eating a healthy, nutritious diet, but also a balanced diet, low education, smoking, hypertension, diabetes, depression, and sleep apnea. Why sleep plays a critical role? Because your brain needs that time to renew. It needs that time to rest. The human brain needs sleep. It cannot go without sleep. And in fact, for people over the age of 65 years old, the National Sleep Foundation recommends 8 hours or more of quality sleep every night. So that's really important to discuss with your doctor or a sleep specialist if you feel like you are not getting those 8 hours. So what can you do to protect your brain health? Some actions that can be done include just taking care of your health, taking care of your body. Healthy body may lead to a healthier brain. Eat nutritious foods and a more balanced diet. Be more active. Take time to learn new things. The older you get, explore hobbies that maybe you've always been curious about. Maybe you always wanted to learn how to play the guitar, or you always wanted to learn how to play the piano, or you always wanted to learn how to speak French. Now's the time, to engage yourself in those types of activities. In fact, there's certain activities that help with your brain health more than any others, and that actually is learning a foreign language, learning a musical instrument, and singing, believe it or not, can help you keep your brain healthier over a long term. I didn't say that people might like listening to you sing, but nonetheless, it is still healthier to your brain. Okay, other ways to protect your brain, exercise, vitamin-rich foods, again, taking care, of that stress management, getting that quality of sleep, involving yourself in cognitive challenges and having those quality social interactions. Um, and working with your doctor or a nutritionist on supplements. There are some types of supplementation that have shown improvements in brain health, but again, you don't want to walk into a supplement store and just start grabbing stuff off the shelf all willy-nilly, because that's not healthy for you either. And you always want to make sure that you work with a medical professional or a dietitian professional, or nutritionist, to select some of those supplements and then share what you're taking with your doctor. Okay, so what else can be done? Other ways to keep healthier brains healthier: seek novel experiences, you know, go do a challenge, go do something new. The other day I was actually, my husband and I, where it was Saturday, we had some time that was available to us, and we were like, well, what do you want to do? We're like, let's go to a new park that we haven't been to before. And so sure enough, I, whipped out my phone and I found a park that we had not walked in before, and we went on a really nice all-day hike, and it was lovely. It was gorgeous. In fact, it looked a lot like what was in that picture, because it was a boardwalk hike over in Ellicott City, the Trolley Trail #9, which, by the way, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. It's really lovely and an easy hike to do. And nurturing with nature. Nature is so renewing, for humankind. Being outside, being in the trees, breathing the fresh air. It is actually really healthy for us as human beings to take some time outside on a regular basis. Okay, so other things that are healthy for us is and protective for our brain is, again, taking care of our cognitive health, taking care of our nutritional health, our physical health, our social health, our spiritual and emotional health. All of these things can lead to potentially, again, depending upon your genes and depending upon other factors that we've already discussed, the potential for reduced risk of cognitive decline, and having just overall a higher quality of life. So you want to take care of your health. You want to get your recommended health screenings twice a year. You want to manage your health problems like diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol. You want to know your numbers, what's your BMI, what's your cholesterol, what's your weight, what's your fasting blood sugar, what's your blood pressure, and are they, within considered normal range for your specific age range and for your specific life history, that you've been exposed to. So again, working with your physician with that. You want to always consult your healthcare provider to make sure that the medicines that you're taking are right for you and are not causing interactions with each other. You want to reduce your risk of brain injuries due to falls and other types of accidents. And of course, you absolutely want to quit smoking if you haven't already. If you're still smoking, please, please, don't do it. Not good ever. Okay, other protective activities include, like I said, challenging new activities and fun activities. Arts and crafts has been shown to be a good activity for your brain. Social groups, very healthy for your brain. Learning a second language, learning a musical instrument, singing in the choir, or learning new technology for if you're over the age of 80, learning new technology for that age range has been shown to be good for your brain. Eating a balanced, healthy diet, again, very good for your brain, but again, everything in moderation. You don't want to do any types of dieting extremes. The one thing you do want to do, though, is hydrate. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. You always want to make sure that you are drinking enough water every day, because if you are dehydrated, that most definitely will and can lead to cognitive decline or more challenges with your brain. Your brain is like a sponge. It pretty much is a sponge, just in your head, and it needs to be hydrated. Okay, so you want to drink at minimum 64 ounces of water a day. And yes, that might make you urinate more. However, if you sip your drink instead of gulping your drink, like, holding it up and gulp, 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 versus sipping, that has a less of a tendency to lead to urgency around urination. Uh, Okay, so here are also some resources to capture your memories. These are great projects to use if you've never heard of them before. They are apps called Memento or Storyworth or Storycatcher that you can purchase, or just sitting down with a young one in your life and recording your memories on videos, telling stories about your life and your accomplishments and earlier memories that you've had in life. That's actually a really fun experience, and it does fortify your brain. Plus, it's a good gift to future generations to be able to have that experience in your life. Other ways to assist a person who is maybe experiencing cognitive decline: you want to be kind, you want to be welcoming, you don't want to try to force them to do things that they're not capable of doing. You don't want to be impatient. You want to show empathy. You want to create purposeful moments for your interactions with them. You don't want to correct them. You sure don't want to remind them that they might have cognitive impairment, because they're not going to be able to hold on to that information. And then they're going to be scared or anxious or stressed because of that information. It really just comes down to being kind. When you're knowing a person in your life that is living with cognitive impairment, just show empathy, be patient, simplify choices, and be kind. Living within that person's abilities is the best thing that you can do to help that person thrive. You want to avoid arguing, correcting their mistakes, ridiculing them, not slowing down, quizzing them. We wouldn't want someone to do these things to us, so we should avoid doing them to another person. Because really, it comes down to kindness is really a language that we all can understand, and that helps us live good lives in the future. Here's some more information for you to follow up on. And does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing right now, and
Let's
people
stop
can,
sharing. Pam, let's leave this one up so that individuals
okay,
can reach you if there's any questions that maybe they don't feel comfortable asking, in this format. I will share there's three ways that people can ask questions. You can type it in the chat, which is at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it, just move your cursor or your mouse around the bottom of your screen, and you should see a panel pop up with an option for the chat. You can also type it in the Q&A box, same location. So move your mouse or cursor around and you'll see a Q&A box sign up. And then the last option is to raise your hand. And then we can actually have your voice on this, but I will say we are recording. So if you want to stay anonymous, I would use the chat or the Q&A. And then you have Corwood's information here on the screen. So if there are questions that you'd like to ask Pam, or another care manager on her team, then they would welcome that inquiry. Pam, I feel like you could have gone on for another hour or two. You are
sort of,
so knowledgeable. I always learn so much when we spend time together. And your investment in, me professionally, the Ingleside communities, many of our clients has been significant. So, thank you for your time today. I don't see things in the chat. I know we've run over a little bit on time, so let me just share. We will be sending this recording to everybody who registered. You are welcome to share it with individuals who weren't able to register or didn't know about it. And if you didn't get Pam's information, then I will email that out to you as well. Thank you to our audience for being with us today.
Thank you, Kirsten.